This is AUGforums.com Real Talk, an unfiltered, independent perspective on Acumatica Cloud ERP. My name is Tim Rodman, and I want to mention three things in this pre-recorded intro before we get started. First, thank you to our sponsors. Our first sponsor is Repay. Repay offers omni-channel integrated payment solutions for Acumatica users. Whether you are making B2B payments or collecting them, Repay is your full-service payments provider. Power up your payments to empower your business and accelerate the AP and AR payment flow through one seamless integration. Our second sponsor is DataSelf. DataSelf Analytics is a revolutionary reporting solution that enables organizations to make the most informed decisions faster and easier than ever. It uniquely simplifies business intelligence, empowers anyone to build and access dashboards, and delivers critical business insight when and where you need it. Our third sponsor is Velixo. Velixo is an award-winning provider of Excel-based reporting solutions for Acumatica. With Velixo, you can build financial, project, and other business reports in Excel with live Acumatica data in just a few minutes and get the answers you need. If you know Excel, you can do it. Please take a minute to support this podcast by clicking each one of the sponsor banners located at augforums.com/sponsors. Our sponsors track clicks, and every click helps to support this podcast. The second thing I'd like to mention is that I'm always looking for victims. Guests. If you use Acumatica in any capacity, no matter how small, I'd love to talk with you. Check out augforums.com/podcast and click the link near the top of the page to learn more about being a guest on the podcast. Third and finally, I'd love to see you listed on my Rolodex. Check out augforums.com/Rolodex to find out who else is using Acumatica and read the instructions at the top to see how you can add yourself to the list. All right, that's it for the pre-recorded intro. Let's get started. Today is Wednesday, April 20th, 2022, and this is episode number 82. Justin Knauf, Business Intelligence Developer at Superior Lubricants Company. Hey, Justin, thanks for coming on today.
Thank you so much for having me.
So before we get into the Acumatica stuff, I always like getting the brief origin story on each one of our guests. So maybe you could start off with where you grew up, where you went to college, and what your first job out of college was like.
Sure. So I grew up in Buffalo, New York, went to high school there, and then went to the University of Buffalo for my degree in computer science. Upon graduating, graduated right before COVID, so that caused some troubles finding my first job. I worked for a bit as a deployment analyst for Sodexo, deploying the mobile app for college campuses to order food. And then from that position, it was a contract position. So once that contract ran up, this was actually my first permanent position here at Superior Lubricants.
So I'm curious, was that first job working remotely, or were you able to go into the office?
The first job, it was mostly remote, but we did go to the offices to meet the team and pick up equipment and things like that.
And how about now? Are you back in the office, or still some kind of hybrid or fully remote?
Yeah, at Superior, I'm back in the office for the most part.
Well, I'm glad to hear that. I feel like COVID has been tough on all of us, but especially someone who's like, I think teenagers had it the worst, or even someone like yourself who's just getting into the workforce. There's so many things that you just pick up that you don't even realize by being in the office. And that must have been really rough starting off remotely, in your first job. That's got to be brutal.
Yeah, we make it work though.
But I'm glad you are back in an office and got a team there to work with. And so it sounds like, this is your first full-time role. So that's really cool. You got into Acumatica right off the bat. And
Yep.
one reason I like asking kind of that origin story is I find that people come into ERP from so many different doorways, if you will. And, Acumatica being an ERP, I always like to hear how people came into it. So, this being your first full-time role, when you were hired there, did you know you'd be working with an ERP product? Do you know what ERP was? How did you kind of find your way into Acumatica?
Yeah. So, I mean, realistically speaking, Acumatica really created my role. My company had no need for a software developer until they started using Acumatica. They saw how powerful it was, and they realized, hey, we can make this do whatever we need it to, and that kind of created my role. So they started looking for a software developer to write customizations for Acumatica. So yeah, walking into the job, I kind of knew, like, it was a job for Acumatica. You know what I mean? So I knew walking in right at the interview, they're like, this is what we're going to be doing, and I was on board with it.
So maybe tell us a little bit about Superior Lubricants, if you can share like size, ballpark annual revenue, ballpark number of employees, if you're able to. But even if you're not able to, tell us a little bit about the company and what they do.
Sure. So Superior is a lubrication distribution company. So we distribute things like motor oil and washer fluid to clients across the country. Like we supply Delta Sonic with a lot of their product and things like that. But our overall team is relatively small. We have about 200 employees, more or less. And actually, something that's kind of exciting is we're actually shifting right now because we started up because we've been working with Acumatica so much. The business intelligence team at Superior, we decided to try to become partners with Acumatica, and we actually just got approved for that. So we're actually now starting up a new company called Tuxton to be an Acumatica partner. So the business intelligence team is kind of where we're shifting to work for Tuxton now. And that
Before you tell me about that, I'm
Sure.
curious about your title. So, your title you've got on LinkedIn is Business Intelligence Developer, but you mentioned that your role was created by Acumatica. It sounded like more of like a C# development customization role. Am I getting that right? Or were you in business intelligence from the very beginning?
Yeah. So the business intelligence developer, like that there was a primarily C# role writing. Like I was writing code the whole time. But now with the shift to being Tuxton, and since our team's growing, I actually, my LinkedIn must be a little out of date, but I was actually promoted to DevOps engineer. So I'm kind of looking to continuously improve our environment, make changes on the fly, so to speak. So I'm kind of leading the software team and deciding who does what projects, and making one of my big projects right now is getting the testing framework for a code, and getting source control all lined up to make the developers be able to write customizations more quickly and efficiently.
So before I dig into more of what you're doing now, which sounds really interesting, let's step back to, I don't know now, was it last month? Do you remember when you did that side panels presentation? Does that sound about right?
Yeah.
So I'll drop a link to that in the episode notes here. If I remember right, it's in an area on community.acumatica.com where you do have to sign in. But for those of you who might be listening and you don't have a login, I don't have any contractual relationship with Acumatica. But you can still request that you get a login created and you'll be able to get access to it. So you do have to have a login, but I thought it was a really good idea where they gave different customers about 15 minutes or less to present something that they were working with. So it was nice and fast and fluid, and just a lot of different things that people were doing with side panels. And you presented something where you were able to connect side panels to individual lines on a screen, not just the header fields. So maybe you could tell us a little bit about what you did there. It looked really interesting.
Sure. So the big motivation from for that project was when I started at Superior. Obviously, they were all just getting going with Acumatica. Like I said, that kind of created my role, and so I wanted to talk to the users who were using the system because they were recently switching from other systems. I know for stock that we were using Take Stock, and so you know when users are used to a certain program, they grow attached to it and they like certain features, right? So I was just going around asking what they didn't like about Acumatica or what we could improve. And my client services team brought up to me that they showed me how Take Stock used to work, and they could open multiple windows or whatnot. And when they opened one window and started working in another, they would communicate with each other and update live as they were working in one. And they're like, this, like Acumatica just doesn't have this. We have side panels, but they don't update. So I said, okay, let me see what I can do about that. So I looked into it, and that was quite the tricky project. I actually had to use JavaScript to do client callbacks in order to have them update with each other. But I managed to get a solution that was workable for our business needs.
So you weren't even working on the line level thing yet. This was just getting stuff to be live.
Yeah, no, well, yeah, I suppose that is true. When
I'm trying to think of what an example is of that. So like, I guess,
So-
give me an example. What's on the left-hand side of the screen and what's on the right-hand side? And
Sure.
why would you need it to be live?
So one example we use it for is for kit assemblies. So the client services team, let's say they're putting on an item on an order, and it's an assembled item. And right now there's 0 in stock. But if it's a kit assembly, we can make those, as long as we have the component items in stock, we can make them and add them to the order, no problem. The client services team wanted to see easily how many they could make and what they would need to make it. So that's what we have going there. So on the sales order screen, the actual data entry screen, not the GI, we have a side panel open to GI that shows all of the. And this GI will take parameter. So this one's looking at the line level. When you're looking at a line on a sales order, the GI on the right-hand side of the screen will take the parameters from that line, the inventory ID and how many you need for the quantity. And the GI then shows you all the different kit specifications that you have that are defined to make that product. Because certain kits can have multiple specifications. There might be multiple formulas to make the same item. So that'll display all of them, and it will show you how much. It will display each of the component items needed to make the product for each of those specifications. And so then the client services team can go through the order and check to make sure that they have enough of the component inventories to create how much they need.
So on the sales order screen, my side panel on the right-hand side is a generic inquiry.
Yes.
It shows me all my kit component information. I'm still missing the live part. Like, is there something, because to me, that's a normal side panel. We'll get to the line part of it in a minute. So there's two things: line with an L-I-N-E, and live, L-I-V-E. First, I'm focused on the L-I-V-E part.
Sure.
What would you be doing on the left-hand side that you would need the right-hand side to suddenly update?
So I guess the live and line go hand in hand, right? Because it's when a user on the sales order is clicking on a different line. Well, now it's a different item. So the right-hand side has to reflect the kit specifications for the new item they just selected.
So normally, actually, I don't even remember. Normally on side panels, let's say you're on that sales order screen,
Mhm.
you might have to click the buttons on the top to move to another sales order to get the side panel on the right to refresh.
Right. Or you could like close it and open it back up or do
I
something like
see.
that. But
Yeah, so it really is a line thing that you did. And because you went to the line level, which side panels don't do natively, that's why
Mhm.
you had to come up with a refresh mechanism because it's not
Right.
sensing that you're moving lines. Okay.
Yeah. Well, you would just realistically, even if you weren't going to the lines, you'd have the same issue. It say you were even looking at the side panel that say you were looking at a side panel that had parameters from the header of the sales order. You'd still have that refresh issue if you say changed the one of the parameters on the sales order, right? That wouldn't innately refresh the side panel, not on a main screen anyway.
Sure. Yeah. And I'm not even sure if the browse buttons do. I know if you do a generic inquiry on the left hand side and a generic inquiry on the right hand side in the side panel, if
Mhm.
you click through the lines on the left hand side, it will refresh the right hand side. But yeah, I'm not sure on the data entry screen if tapping
Yeah,
through the records. But yeah, you're right. Anything else on that screen, it's not going to pick up.
yeah, it's because the refresh picks up when the actual the core data object, like for a sales order, for example, the main DAC is the SO order. If the SO order isn't changing, then like the key fields, if they aren't changing, then it won't refresh the side panel. But if you navigate to a new sales order, it would. But just changing records on an existing sales order wouldn't refresh it without customization.
So the line line part of this sounds like, the really key feature here. And so I could see how you did that. Well, it's great that you did that on the sales order screen. I think that's a very popular screen that people need information at their fingertips when they're entering data. So that's really cool. Tell us though about how you built that customization. First of all, are we dealing with like a lot of code here, or could someone go through there and figure out what you did? Step one. And then step two, how transportable is it to using it on other data entry screens?
So I wouldn't say it's a lot of code, but it's definitely sensitive code. It's you need everything to be in just the right spot in order for
Like
it to work.
finicky
Yeah,
code.
it can it can be a little finicky, but realistically, there's not a lot of code. There's just like four unique parts of the code that you need to do, but they're all like really short snippets, right? Which I explain and walk through what all of them do and why they're used on a Stack Overflow post I shared in the last presentation. Um,
Oh, I missed that part. Oh, okay.
yeah,
I'll
oh,
make sure I put a link to that as well on this episode.
sure. Um, but yeah, it's not a lot of code, but
So it's maybe
throughout.
finicky to get the code the way you wanted it, but once you have it in place, it's not like it's finicky when it works
Right,
reliably
yeah.
once you publish it.
Once it's published, it's very reliable and stable now. And I built it in such a way to be scalable so that you can add more side panels and they won't interfere with each other. So you can have as many side panels as with live updates and row level updates as you want, and they won't interfere with each other. Um, and it wasn't built specifically for sales orders. You could write the same code on any screen and it will function the same way.
But I would need to do another customization, copying your same method
Yes,
to have it work on another screen. It's not like, because screen customizations are screen dependent, right?
correct. It might be You might be able to bake it into an attribute, but that might get tricky because there's JavaScript involved. An
What?
attribute, you might be able to bake the customization into a C# attribute, so you can just put that on a DAC and you just put the attribute, your custom attribute, on a DAC, and then that DAC, anywhere that DAC shows up, it will have the side panel there. but that'd be very complicated. So it would just make the project more modular.
And you'd still have to customize each screen to add that custom DAC. It'd just be a lighter add to turn it on per screen.
Correct. But
Interesting.
Adding a attribute to a DAC is pretty. Adding an attribute to a DAC is pretty negligible. You just have to override the one DAC. The question, the tricky part's making that attribute to be that scalable and modular.
Well, I think that's really cool. I mean, if I find some spare time, I might pick up. Well, actually, I should ask, where is this located? Is it up on GitHub somewhere, or is it in a secret vault stored away safe in the Superior Lubricants company?
The customization itself is baked into a larger customization of ours, so I can't share that whole source code, but all the snippets relevant to this customization are on I explained how they're used on both. I know I did on StackOverflow, and then I think I copy and pasted that into the community forums too, which I can send you a link to that after we're done.
Okay. Yeah, that'd be great. Yeah, especially for those of us who feel like whenever I've tried posting on StackOverflow, I feel like my knuckles get hit with a ruler. You know, it's like, yeah, you should have looked that up. Or there's always this like developer, I don't know, abrasiveness that I experience on StackOverflow. So if you put it on the community, I'd be more apt to respond on that post.
That is a known thing about StackOverflow. People joke about that pretty often. They say if you want an answer quick, you don't post the question, you post the answer incorrectly. It's the fastest way to.
That's good advice. Because then you might get basically beat up for it, but at least you get the right answer.
Yep.
Oh, that's funny. Well, that's cool. So, I mean, it's a simple thing from a usability standpoint, but it sounds like coming up with that required some work to get that finicky code working. And I think that's really cool. And, even the fact that you've got it on the sales order screen, that I don't know, but that could be 80% of the use cases right there, right? I mean, I don't know. Right. It seems like the most popular screen that people need information at their fingertips on, but, it's nice to know that you could follow the similar concept on other data entry screens.
Yeah.
So that's awesome. So we got some more info there, a little more backstory there. People can watch the video to see it in action. They can go to the StackOverflow or community post to see the gory details of how you did it. Now let's hear more about this new company. So tell me the name of the company again.
Tuxton.
Can you spell that?
Tuxton.
And it's a new company. And so are you moving over as an employee to this new company?
Yes.
So it's still owned by the same ownership group that owns Superior Lubricants?
Correct. Yep.
Interesting. And when you said you become a partner, have you become a VAR partner or more of an ISV partner?
A VAR partner. So we're working on getting gold certified now. In fact, I'm almost done with my technical specialist badge from Acumatica.
Interesting. So a company that's dealing with lubricants has now gotten into the business of implementing Acumatica. Tell us about the reasoning behind that. That's pretty rare. So
we're actually reselling Acumatica. And yeah, we think that this is we're pretty excited about it because we think we think we're in a really unique situation because most resellers of Acumatica, right? They're software resellers. So they're trying to sell you a software, and that's great, and they'll know how to use the software, right? But this is where we're trying to like fill this niche of we're still trying to sell you the software, of course, but we don't just understand how the software works. We understand how business works. And that's really the point we're trying to drive home, is that we are comfortable enough with the system because we are using it and applying it to our business. So we kind of understands both sides of the coins, both how the software works and how that impacts your business. So that way we want to be, saying like, oh, like if a client comes up to us and says we need this, we don't just want to regurgitate, well, this is how you do that in the system. We want to say, well, if this is the goal you're trying to accomplish, this is the most efficient way with the tools that we have, right? Rather than just answering questions. You know what I mean?
That sounds really interesting. And that makes a lot of sense. I mean, that's always what resonates with clients. It's not the technical response, it's the I understood the business part of your response that resonates. And so I assume,
Right.
I mean, you're not looking to sell and implement Acumatica for like a professional services company. I would assume you're going to look to sell and implement Acumatica for companies that are in your industry.
We do have the niche of being a distribution company, so we have a lot of unique issues that we had to customize to sell there. But I mean, I wouldn't say we're limiting ourselves to that niche, you know.
Interesting. But being able to come into an implementation from a user's perspective,
Mhm.
that I also use the system, that is really interesting. I mean, I know a lot of VARs, they also use Acumatica internally, but they're professional services companies. So to be able to
Right.
say that you are actually a distribution company using Acumatica is unique. That's a really cool idea. Who came up with that idea? Was that you or was that someone else in management?
Yeah, that'd be my boss's. So we got the COO of the company, Mike Anzak, and then the CIO, Scott Rakowski. They're pretty much my two bosses I report to at Superior and Tuxton, and they're both leading the charge in Tuxton, being the president and vice president respectively. And really, Scott, like, yes, this is like I said, this was a software position going back to how we were talking earlier when I started at Superior. Yeah, it's a software position where I'm primarily developing C sharp, but we Scott hired me as a business intelligence developer explicitly because he didn't want me just focusing on the code. He wanted me learning the business too. That way, I'm not just asking him, okay, Scott, what code do you want written? I'm saying, okay, Scott, I understand the business needs, and this is what I think the best solution is. And that's really the difference there.
So what type of true business intelligence work have you done and what BI products have you worked with so far?
Sure. So this is like, for example, that the side panel thing, that wasn't something that Scott came to me and told me to make. That was something that I talked to users about, said, hey, like what I went up to them and I was asking them how they were doing their work, how they liked the system. And I'm like, hey, I think I can build that. And that's something that I brought back to Scott and said, this is something I think we should do. Um, Another thing is sometimes Scott will give me a project and say, hey, this is what we need. This is what I think we should build. And I said, well, Scott, like, I understand the business need, but the way you want to do it is going to clog up our database with unneeded fields or whatever. Maybe we could do this solution where we won't need to make more database fields and eat up more data. Um, that's kind of the idea. Since I kind of understand what the business needs are, I don't just blindly build projects. I'm able to make more technical decisions to improve the efficiency and health of the system.
And how new is this Tuxton endeavor for you guys? Is it just a few months
We
old or?
Yup, not even. We just got approved to be partners probably less than a month ago.
Oh, wow. This is
Right.
very new.
So this is very new. When I said when I said I was excited because we're working on something, it wasn't even official then. That's why I didn't say anything back then.
That's cool.
Yeah.
So this might be too early on for this, but have you had any discussions about doing customizations for existing Acumatica customers, even if you're not the VAR for those customers?
I don't, we have not had any conversations about that, but we're certainly open to the idea.
Yeah, I just think about your side panel example there, and the way you came up with a cool solution. To me, what I like about it is a lot of developers will completely reinvent the wheel. They'll see a need, even if they get the need right, their development solution for it is very over engineered. And like, for example, they'd build their own side panels to accomplish it because they didn't realize there were side panels.
Right.
But that you understood what's available and at your fingertips, and you're building on top of solutions rather than re-engineering and building your own approach to it, I think is hard to find in a developer, in my opinion. And so, I could see how you'd be coming up with really cool things that other people could use. I think where it gets sticky is since you're a VAR and you get involved in another VAR's client, there's always nervousness that happens there, but people do it. I mean, VARs sell add-on products for Acumatica, so it might be something that you guys look into, especially since you're very developer oriented and already into creating customization projects.
Right. I'd say right now, one thing that's probably in the way of that is a lot of our customizations are kind of baked into each other. So it'll be hard to isolate one particular thing to like say put on the market. But we're definitely planning to isolate some of our cooler, more unique projects that are less specific, more generic to all users rather than a specific need we had. We definitely talked about possibly selling things a while ago, but we're still trying to get things settled with getting certified and getting our first customer and things like that.
Yeah, only a few weeks into this.
Mhm.
Let's take care of first things first. I will, on that same point though, I'll put out my note of caution on that I always say, and I have no problem saying it publicly. I mean, I've seen it too many times where people develop really cool things and then Acumatica just steals it. I mean,
Yeah,
I think
I
it's totally
actually,
disrespectful. They're not very respectful of what people do. They want you to just put it up on GitHub and make it free. That's their mindset. It's kind of an Amazon mindset. So,
right,
if you're really going to try to build a business around that, just be careful. I've just seen it too many times. They might not copy your code, but they'll just take your idea and do it their own way, and then you got to come up with the next thing, right? And you're basically just helping them develop their own product, and you're not really making that much on it.
right. Yeah, I actually remember hearing you talk about that in some of your other podcasts. When you invited me, I gave some of them a listen. I heard that be brought up. Thank you for your words of warning. I actually
Yeah,
heard
a
I
VAR
heard
wouldn't be
there's a
able to
big
say that because they'd be nervous about saying something bad, but I've got no contractual relationship. So I have no problem telling it like it is, at least how I think it is.
right.
Well, that's cool. I mean, that's quite a change. I mean, you graduate right before COVID, you go into the job market right during COVID, and already you've made a major shift, embracing Acumatica even more. That's pretty interesting timing, from a personal standpoint, that you got right into a company using Acumatica, and then you're now shifting into a VAR role. That's really interesting. I think, and you're hitting it at a really hot time. I mean, COVID, in my opinion, helped out Acumatica. It made the demand for anything cloud, a lot higher than it was before COVID, and it was already ramping up. So that, from a personal side, I think you're in a really good spot. That sounds really interesting.
Yeah, we're really looking forward to this, and it's something that we've been talking about for a while, and we're excited to finally be able to move on it. Because we got a great team at Tuxton. Besides just the developers, like we have some great business analysts, and we're very excited to get moving on this.
And you said it was Mike and Scott who are leading the
Mhm.
team. Is that right?
Yes.
And were they from Superior Lubricants or they came in from
Yep.
the outside? Oh,
Yeah.
wow.
They
That's still so interesting to me that you shifted into a completely different business out of an existing company. That's really interesting.
Well, we're working so much with Acumatica to support our business, right? And we realized, we're we realized we just have a great team and good assets that we thought we could help other companies use the system like we do.
Yeah. And you said 200 people, 200 person company is kind of
Mhm.
small. I mean, that's actually fairly large, I think, for an Acumatica or any mid market company, or I should, at least I should say a good size in that, a company of that size, you're going to have a variety of problems and challenges that you actually can work on Acumatica on a daily basis. A lot of companies that are using Acumatica are smaller and they don't really have the need for a full-time role on that. So, that kind of worked out too, that you're at a company that was large enough to give you enough problems to build those Acumatica skills that put you in a position to go into a VAR role.
Oh man, do we do we have problems? Uh, there's there's no short of problems for me to chew through. I can tell you that, Tim.
Well,
Uh,
maybe tell us about some of the other cool things that you came up with. I mean, obviously, we're not going to have nice posts that tell us how to do it, but maybe conceptually describe some of the other customizations that you've built and what needs they met.
sure. So one big one we had was for the barcoding modules. So Acumatica has the built-in warehouse solution, but we found that there were some things that were, I guess, clunky about it. Like, for example, there was no way from a scanner to associate a barcode with a product. So, say we didn't have a barcode in the system, or like the vendor we received product from put a new barcode on the product, and well, that's not in our system anymore, right? But we know what the product is, and we want to reuse that barcode. Well, so I built a customization for the mobile app that will then, which then the scanners also use the mobile app. So we are able to the warehouse guys now are able to just scan a barcode, and if it's not recognized, it says, "Hey, we don't recognize this barcode. You want to associate it with an item?" And the selector pops up, and they can just pick the item that they want to associate with it, and then man, the warehouse guys can just keep going with their work.
Oh, that's cool. And then does it add it to the cross references tab on the stock item screen?
Yeah.
Oh, wow. That's cool.
Um, let's see. With us being working with oil and lubricants a lot of our product is liquid, and that 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 comes with its own set of circumstances that Acumatica just wasn't out of the box ready to handle. Like, for example, uh, liquids liquids the volume changes based on temperature, right? So you can't really measure how much liquid is in volume because it changes based on the temperature. So we
And you're not talking
usually
about a manufacturing process. You're just talking about a distribution process
right.
here. Okay.
Yeah. So say we're loading up like we're pumping liquids into trucks to go deliver oil, right? Well, how do you measure how much liquid you put on the truck? And then we have constantly, we're pumping liquids. Well, there's going to be some overflow where it it doesn't match up one to one because there's going to be some liquid lost in the pipes and things like that. So we had to build customizations to account for all these sort of situations, and like for the liquid and the weight part, when we're doing inventory, like now if we're doing calculations, we have to go. It's all in the system based on gallons, right? But again, like the gallons change based on the temperature. So how do you know what it is? So for the scanning, I made it so you're able just to weigh a container. The container is going to have a weight associated with it already in the system, right? A tare weight. And then so the warehouse guys, they scan a container and then they can just weigh it. They put in the weight and it will subtract the tare weight of the container and then convert that and then look at the product to see the ratio to convert it from pounds to gallons, and then does that calculation and without anybody even seeing it.
And so what's your inventory base unit of measure? Is it gallons?
Yeah.
Interesting. But then you said how does the temperature factor into that weight calculation?
So so liquids, the volume changes with temperature, but the weight won't.
Okay. So you're basically taking temperature out of the equation by using the weight to measure. And so basically you're saying you can't trust the meter when it's flowing through the pipe. You can't really trust the meter, but you trust the weight of it on the other end when you pumped it out of something and you pumped it into a container.
Right.
Okay.
And then that's speaking of containers, that's a whole nother problem we had is like we essentially need like locations, like warehouse locations that move, right? And also locations for a warehouse that can only hold one item, because if you put 2 liquids in a container, well, that's not going to work out too well.
We're talking about like a shipping container here when it's actually moving.
Yeah, or just containers like we have totes. We fill up the totes with various liquids, and then we might transfer the whole tote from one warehouse to another. Which this we've been writing customizations to make things like that smoother. I want to write a whole container module for explicitly this, and I'm pretty sure there's one already written somewhere on the Acumatica community market. But that's
have you looked
obviously
at the one from
scale.
PC Bennett at all?
I'm
I think
unsure.
that might be the one.
I know we looked at some of them, but we weren't ready to move on a solution.
I'll include a link to another podcast episode with the customer that we talk about that a little bit.
Great, thank you.
You mentioned kits when you were talking about the sales orders earlier and that line side panel thing that you did.
Sure.
Have you done anything with kits customization wise?
Not that I can think of. I know we're planning one, but let's see. Why did you have something in mind?
No, just curious if you mentioned containers and how you're putting things on other things, and it made me wonder if you were using kits for everything. It almost sounded like you were getting into manufacturing a little bit, and so it made me wonder if you were using kits for that.
We do have the manufacturing module.
Okay.
But we still use kits for it's kind of a difference between assemblies versus production. Like if it's like a multi-step, multi-day process, then we're using productions, right? But if it's just like, oh, we have a drum, we have this oil, put the oil in the drum, it's a new product, that's just an assembly, So we kind of use that as like a distinction between the two.
And when you say the manufacturing, you mean the regular discrete manufacturing edition or the process manufacturing add-on from, I can't remember the company right now.
This is the manufacturing edition of Acumatica.
Oh, okay. So even though you're dealing with fluids, you're able to use discrete manufacturing maybe for other things?
Yeah. Like that's like we do any oils that we produce, we do through the manufacturing module.
Oh, interesting. And that works out okay for you?
Yep.
Okay. Oh.
Why you sound surprised?
So I don't know that area very well, but I know that, discrete, that manufacturing edition is discrete. And, you're dealing with quantities, whereas there's an add-on from, hopefully it'll come to me. I can't remember the name of the company right now, but they were well known in other ERP systems, and they built a solution in Acumatica for process manufacturing, which I don't know much about at all, but it's supposed to be better for fluid type environments.
I see.
And maybe they still call it manufacturing edition. Maybe that's what you have, but like the one I'm thinking of was developed originally by Joss Systems, if that name rings a bell.
Gotcha. I just know it's like an official manufacturing module from Acumatica. Like it's the Acumatica Manufacturing Edition.
Huh.
Let's
Interesting.
take a look here.
Yeah, I wonder which one you have. Like, I wonder what your features look like on the enable disable features screen. I'm looking up as well myself, see if I can. I don't know why I'm blanking on the name right now. I always take all my notes on Twitter when I'm looking at any type of Acumatica presentation. That way I can search easily.
Yeah, so on enable disable features, it says manufacturing and material requirements planning.
That's one of the features. Then is another one like production orders. Do you have a screen called production orders?
Yeah, we have a screen called production orders.
Yeah, that sounds like the regular one.
Huh. Yeah, we are doing. Speaking of them, the manufacturing requirements planning, the MRP display, we've been doing a lot of customizations to that too.
So it's more from a reporting standpoint.
Yeah.
But then it's on a screen that allows you to do stuff. It's not just a static report.
Right. So the MRP display shows like it'll take a look at all the inventory that you need for upcoming orders. And it will show you, how typically we receive the product, whether that's transfers, productions, we buy it, whatever. There's classes for each of those. And then you're able to just select which products you want to produce or order, whatever, however you're doing it. And you can, right from that screen, just produce or create productions for all of them, or create orders, or whatever you need to do.
So you're both maybe including some additional information and then also improving the workflow around that core screen.
Oh, I was just talking about that's what the screen does itself right now. The things we're customizing about it are really just like kind of quality of life changes. Like for example, it takes into account your safety stock, right? So when there's order, say you're using up a product below a certain amount for safety stock, the MRP display is smart enough to know, oh, we're below our safety stock. Let's order X more to go back to our safety stock. But for us, when we're say doing a production of a bulk production of this oil, right? Like we can produce as much as we need in one production, right? So when we go below our safety stock, we don't want to go back to the minimum amount. We want to refill our supply and go up to the maximum. So that's the type of changes that I've been making to the MRP display.
Yeah, so that sounds like you're not just touching it, you're seeing the result on the display, but I would describe that more as you're touching the way the MRP engine works.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, interesting.
Definitely.
I really like that. So I've noticed that specific thing before, because you can use regular replenishment to do what you were talking about, where I want to order back up to a max, not my safety stock. But the MRP version of replenishment is not as intelligent. But it's annoying to then have two different processes, one for like MRP items and one for replenishment items. So you're doing the right thing, I think, there, where you just run MRP, but you're making it more intelligent to handle the stuff that it doesn't handle. I like that.
Thank you.
I did find the company I was looking for. It's a Batch Master. They make their company is eWorkplace Apps, and they started off with a quality management module. I'm going back to my notes from January 2020, and I know process manufacturing was next on their list. I assume that I'll put a link to this one tweet where they have lists of companies: chemicals, paints and coatings, personal care and cosmetics, pharmaceuticals. Fluid is my bullet point, but I'll put a link to that one on there. But I think it sounds like it's working for you. So, I don't understand personally that where you cross the line into process manufacturing, but it sounds like you've got it working for you with regular manufacturing.
Yeah, there's still improvements we want to make, but it seems to be working pretty well for us.
I'm curious specifically on the MRP,
Mhm.
what was, if we say it was finicky to get the line side panels working, was it more or less finicky to be able to make changes to MRP in a way where you felt like you weren't not modifying source code, but where you weren't getting too far in, where an upgrade would be really painful for you? Does that make sense?
So the MRP display engine, that I wouldn't call that customization finicky like it would the side panels. The side panels were how I would describe finicky, mostly because of the JavaScript callbacks and the timings were really sensitive there. But that was really like, there was only so many combinations you could do until you got it right. Like it was really just dependent on like getting that timing right. Whereas this project, I wouldn't call it finicky, but it was definitely more difficult and more involved. But yeah, it's at least it was consistently wrong when it was wrong though,
Oh, you
That
say
makes
more
sense.
difficult. Was it more difficult to understand how it was working, but making the change was maybe like more surgical, where the actual code maybe wasn't that extensive, but making sure you understood what was happening? Was that the hard part?
Yeah, yes and no. It was definitely hard to understand what was going on, but then also making the code wasn't easy for that either. It wasn't like surgical. Here it is, do the thing, because the parts that I would have needed to customize were kind of like they weren't in a spot I could easily reach, right? So I had to kind of like work it around a little bit to make things function.
Yeah, and that maybe then segues into the upgrade part of it. Maybe you haven't been through
Right.
enough upgrades,
Oh no.
maybe
See,
hopefully
that's why.
they don't touch MRP, haven't in a while. But if they ever do, you're probably looking at
Oh
a
yeah.
good amount of work there.
That's why at the beginning I mentioned I was working on a testing framework, and that's that's a large reason we want the testing framework done is for upgrades.
And even specifically in MRP, to make sure that you come up with a good set of use cases that you can run through and make sure the engine is still spitting out the correct results.
Right. Yeah, and really like so this testing framework, it's going to be designed to well, first of all, it's just like automated testing, right? Like we define the tests, so if the tests run, we know it's working right, and once we have those tests written, we can just push the button and it will run our code, do the tests, and the tests are, just simulating user inputs, and then verifying the results. And so this testing framework will essentially let us write code, push the button. Does it work? Yes or no? It'll eliminate a lot of time we spend manually testing, because I can't tell you how many times like we're testing and, oh, we think it's good. And then we'll keep going and then we'll realize, oh, there's this bug in this one edge case that we didn't think about and we didn't manually test it.
Well, yeah, and your MRP scenario is a great one for that, because I would imagine that you might want to approach it with creating an item so that there's no history there messing you up. Creating an item that doesn't exist, then putting in some stock quantities, then putting in sales orders, putting in purchase orders. That's a lot of steps, right? I mean, is that kind of the way you're thinking for testing?
Oh yeah,
MRP?
that's exactly right. And once we have the test framework built, then we just push the button and it'll do all that every time from scratch.
Yeah, that's really cool. So you might end up creating like upgrade test 01, 02, 03 for all your different scenarios that you want to test. And then you just go check the results on the MRP display to see if it worked. I like
Yeah,
that.
and the idea is like we're never going to delete these tests. Every time something breaks or every time we develop something new, we develop tests for it. We save the tests in the framework, and then every time we make any change to the code, these tests are going to run automatically. And if any of them break, we know the projects are interfering with each other, and we'll be notified before it even hits live.
That's cool. Yeah,
That's
I predict, based on your skill set and the way you're thinking, I predict a year from now, you're developing Acumatica add-ons. And, even though Acumatica might eat it eventually, you might have a year or two of being able to make some money off of it. And who knows, looking at the way Acumatica now has got a new CEO, that to me is shifting gears into probably more sales and marketing focus is my guess. I don't have inside info, but every ERP company tends to follow a similar trajectory. So, my point is they might cool off on their development intensity, and then you also have the fact that they just keep getting more horizontal. Like they just picked up the property management module from Imperium, and that the more they spread thin, the harder it is for them to keep up in different areas, right? So there's going to be more and more gaps to fill the more horizontal they get. So, you might be okay going that route. My words of caution might become less and less relevant as time goes on here with Acumatica.
Well, also, did you hear about the shift to the .NET or the .NET Core framework though?
I did, and I really
so that's
wonder.
Going to shake things up a lot. I'm pretty sure that's going to shake things up a lot for the development scene at least.
Yeah, that demoed really well at the last summit, just how fast it was.
Yeah, it's going to really improve speed.
And to me, that's a huge differentiator between Acumatica and Dynamics 365, which is just really slow, my experience with it at least. I really like Microsoft from a philosophy standpoint, what they're doing, but they're dealing with a Navision product under the hood at the end of the day, which runs slow. So I really like that .NET Core. I do wonder personally how much the Ukraine invasion affects the timeline of that. But yeah, I definitely agree. It looks promising. It looks really cool.
Yeah, they say, I think they said 80% of all of their developers' time and effort is going into that transformation. So just imagine all the things they'll be able to make once that transformation is done.
Definitely a lot of possibilities. I think that when you get into the VAR consulting space, like you're now in, your success is not so much determined by what you do. It's more about what you don't do. Being able to stay focused on things and become well known for things is hard, because there's all sorts of cool things that you want to do. So I really wish you success in this new Tuxton company, and I think it'd be really interesting to check back in with you a year from now and see how it's going over there.
Yeah, well, thank you very much for your encouragement and support and having me on.
And thanks for jumping on that community side panel event. That's what put you on my radar. I'm glad we got to connect and chat.
I am too. Yeah, that was a great opportunity.
All right. Well, we'll be in touch. Thanks again, Justin.
All right. Thank you, Tim. You have a good one.
All right. Well, that's it for now. We'll catch you on the next episode of AUGforums.com Real Talk. Thanks for listening and take care.